So, Mark, I know that your thinking was that the economy was fundamentally sound some time back. Is that still your thinking, and for how long can that remain the case?
I think it is. I mean, I don't think, I think there's parts of the economy that are doing really well, and there's parts that aren't. The parts that aren't are really on the leisure side. But there's going to be another stimulus bill. I think if it had been a Democratic Senate, it would have been somewhere around sort of $2 to $3 trillion. I think with the Republican Senate, it'll be somewhere around $1 to $2 trillion. So I think for the U.S. economy, everything is good right now.
You mentioned the Senate. Obviously, you've been a Biden mega donor. You were a Harris supporter before she dropped out originally. What happens in Georgia? I mean, for Wall Street, it would probably be good if it stayed red, but would there be any attempt to, fund at least some of the effort in Georgia between now and then to perhaps overturn those seats?
Yeah, look, I think it'll be what it is. I mean, I think Democrats are going to spend a huge amount of money to try to win those two seats. I think Republicans will. And at the end of the day, it's going to be the Georgia voters. So I think what you'll probably find is it'll be one of each, Democrat and a Republican. So it'll be a close Senate. But at the end of the day, I think what will end up happening is it seems that Wall Street would rather have a bit of a divided government as opposed to a government which is all Democratic.
So what would that mean, for example, for Biden's tax plans, and specifically things like capital gains and dividends? Would they get enacted? Would Wall Street see a hit there?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's, part of it is really, if you have a Republican Senate, I think that's going to be hard. And I think at the end of the day, taxes will probably go up a little bit. And it's going to be a question of sort of what's the deal that Biden and McConnell will be able to cut. But I think it'll end up being you'll see taxes go up, maybe just not as much as people had thought before.
So some kind of a brokered plan, you think? So we won't see the same taxes?
So. Yeah, I think so. I think it'll go up a little bit. I mean, our deficit is going up. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, the government's going to need some more revenue. So I think people will end up doing what makes the most economic sense, but you're going to need to have a little bit of higher taxes because we have borrowed a huge amount of money and those dollars are still continuing to grow.
Mark, what would your preference or Wall Street's preference be, that they be extra payroll taxes or that there would be extra taxes across the board?
I think probably payroll, but I haven't looked at any of the plans. So I'd have to really do some work on it. I just think you're going to need extra revenue. The benefit for the U.S. government today is that rates are very low. I think as you stated earlier, I think rates right now are around, the 10 years around 89 bips. Hopefully that stays there. But I mean, if it starts moving up, the cost of servicing this debt is going to keep on growing. So I think right now we have an opportunity where rates are low to try to pay off some of that debt.
Let's talk a little bit about the pandemic and the markets. So the vaccine rollout, does it come in time to save some of these companies that are desperately holding on, or will we see a wave of bankruptcies?
I think what you're going to see is a wave of lending. And the reason for that is really what Wall Street was worried about was nobody knew how long everything was going to take. So if you thought about it, people could say if you were optimistic, it was 6 months. If you were pessimistic, it was 2 to 3 years. Now, I think if you're optimistic, it's 3 months. And if you're pessimistic, it's a year. So ultimately, really what that means is you're going to be more willing to lend money to companies because things will be working out sooner. So there's just going to be a cost to that. You'll have some companies that will be filing, but the opportunity to do rescue lending and to lend money, that's going to grow exponentially over the course of the next year.
Now, Mark, early on in the pandemic, you invested in companies like Macy's, for example, bankrupt companies like Frontier Communications, which says now it's going to come out of bankruptcy next year. You also had JCPenney, Intelsat, Diamond Offshore. What have been the changes to your positions that you can tell us about?
Well, I think on Frontier, we've, because of the price of how high they've gone, we've had to sell a bunch of the bonds. And I would say, Macy's, we've continued our position. Diamond Offshore, we've increased our position. So I think for the majority of all the positions that we had, Revlon would be another one. Over the course of the last 3 to 6 months, things have been working out. So we've been taking some profits and investing in new situations.
Yeah, new situations. Oh, do tell.
I'd rather wait if that's okay, just simply because we're trying to build positions there. So I apologize, but happy to do it next time when we're.
I know you were looking at AMC Entertainment last time. Do theaters survive in some form, and when do we see them with audiences?
I think they absolutely do survive. I think people are going to go back to movies. I think that's actually a pretty good situation. If you take a look at it, you're creating that company around sort of a 2 or 3 multiple. So, unless you're going to tell me that people don't go back to movies, they will. And, you may not have the same number who went back, but it's still going to be a pretty good amount of people. So I think AMC and a bunch of the theater companies will survive and actually will be doing fine.
And airlines?
Airlines, we're continuing to invest. I mean, I think that has been, for us, we were a big believer that people were going to fly back again over the course of the next couple of years. I think that amount of time has gotten reduced. So I think on the airline side, you're going to see that come this summer, as more people have gotten the vaccine, that things will start getting back to normal, at least by this summer.
Mark, you mentioned there that you had to sell off some of your positions because things got so expensive. I mean, they did across the board, right? Post-Fed and then post-stimulus, and there were a few little catalysts. Where is the opportunity now that, that you see? Is anything cheap anymore? And what's the pandemic discount?
So things are still cheap. I mean, they are. There's a lot of specialty lending. I mean, we just did a deal literally about, I think we closed on it about a week ago in the UK, where we're investing around sort of a 14-15% return, where you're lending money, and you're lending money anywhere between, I would tell you, 10 to 15%. And the reason you're doing that is because people need that capital. So you're going to see an increase in that, in those specialty lending. You're still going to find special situations. There's this belief that because things are working out and because of the vaccine that everything is back to normal. It isn't. I mean, it's getting back to normal, but you still have hundreds of billions of dollars of opportunities out there on the leisure side, on the energy side, and on special situations.
Hospitality?
Hospitality is another one, absolutely.
All right, we have to talk about the NBA. The league has obviously suffered, something like 10% lower revenue, which actually is good when you think about the amount of expenses that you had to put into the bubble and, all of the revenue lost. Can it survive another year of bubble, lost revenue, and, how do you manage that?
I think it can. I mean, I think when we look at it, the really hard part is, and I think it's for all sports teams, that ultimately at the end of the day, you do need fans, right? Players want to play in front of fans. People want to go to games. So I think for us, we'll start the season December 22nd, and then we're going to work with the local authorities. And, really the focus is going to be the health and safety of the players, but of the employees at the arena and of the fans. So the question is going to be, how many fans can we let in the beginning? And then ultimately, as the vaccine takes effect, the question is, how long does it take to get things back to normal? It'll definitely be back to normal by next season, by the following season. I think for this year, I think you're just going to see that starting January, February, March, April, May, June, each month you'll be able to have more and more fans. So I think it's going to be slow, but it'll get back to normal.
Can you do it without having to make major adjustments to the league's salary structure? Or do you have plans to talk about that with the rest of the league?
Well, it's actually pretty simple. I mean, we're partners with the players. So at the end of the day, the players end up having 50% of our revenue. So if our revenue is down 10%, players will get paid about 10% less, right? If it's down 40%, then it's 40% less, right? So it's a partnership, and the goal is that obviously what we'd like to do is have the revenue be as low as possible, which is exactly what the players want. So I think we're all aligned to try to do what's best for the league and for our fans.
So Giannis has been tweeting in the last day or two, a lot of speculation as to where he is in the last few hours. It might be in Sweden, he might be somewhere else, maybe you know.
Right.
What happens with him, Mark? What have you offered him?
I haven't offered him anything. What I do offer him is my love. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it's November. I'd have to go back and check, but it's either November 18th or the 20th, where we can start talking to players. And as soon as we're able to do that, he's going to be the first one. I think it's whatever it is at midnight. At midnight and 1 second, we'll be speaking to Giannis to try to get everything done.
Would you be okay if he went somewhere else? Would Russell Westbrook be somebody that you'd be interested in as a sort of maybe a consolation prize?
No, not at all. I wouldn't be okay. I don't think I'd be okay at all. I love Giannis. I think he's an exceptional individual. He has been the most valuable player on our team, but not only in our team, but in the league. So I think for us, especially for the Bucks, we're going to need Giannis, and hopefully things will work themselves out.
Your thoughts on them? I have to ask on the Miami Marlins hiring Kim Ng to be the general manager today. Obviously, you yourselves are very progressive that way, and you do have assistant GMs that are female and so on. But it is a big day, right, for the major leagues?
I think it's a great day. I think it's absolutely fabulous. It's always hard to be the first person. So I want to congratulate her, but I think what we're going to find over the course of the next couple of years is she's not going to be the only person. I think there's a lot of exceptionally talented women. So sooner or later, you're going to find that within the NBA, within football, and everywhere else, you're going to find that that's not going to be the exception. It should start becoming the norm.
Speaking of the NBA, Steve Cohen obviously just buying the Mets. I'm sure he'd really appreciate some advice from you, Mark. Do you have any for him?
Sure. My advice to Steve would be, do what you think is right. That he's been a huge fan of the Mets. I'm sure he's been thinking of the things he could do. What I would tell you is that leadership matters. It matters on the field. It matters as an owner. And try to always do the right thing, and don't let money be an issue.